it's Lisa from My Dreaming Soap. Welcome to my channel. Now today we're going to do a fun summertime soap, and it's going to be a sculpted layers soap. And the scrapers that I use for this soap is going to be a fairly straightforward one to do. So if you're unsure about sculpted layers and you're worried about it being all complicated, this is a more straightforward one. And it's also quite good because the layers are relatively flat, so you don't really lose that much soap and calculations aren't particularly difficult. So it's a great one if you're a bit more of a new person to sculpted layers. So it's going to be a fun ice cream sculpted soap. So let's have a look at what I'm using. First of all, I'm going to do a background of my soap behind my ice cream cone. So I've got my oils here that I need for my background. And the colour I'm going to use in my background is called Caribou Blue. Caribou Blue. I always call it caribou, like the moosey type animal. Right, Caribou Blue from Mica Mama. Now it's going to be a solid colour, so I'm just adding it straight to my oils. And I am also going to add some titanium dioxide because with all of these colours, I want them to be not really bold and shouty. So I'm putting slightly less of the colour in if I'd wanted a really dramatic colour. And I'm going to add a little titanium dioxide to each layer. The second reason I'm adding a little titanium dioxide is the fragrance that I'm using does discolour slightly. So therefore, I'm just going to add this to sort of add a little bit of whiteness to it. Okay, that was just right there. Actually, a little blob there. Okay, so this will be this sort of tealy turquoise background. Now I've just mentioned the fragrance. I'm taking a little bit of a risk with this fragrance. I'm not sure how it's going to work. This is Coconut Passion. I think they call it now Tropodelic at Stock Fragrance, but it does move really quite quickly. I have tested it and it moved to a sort of quite a thick trace within about 30 seconds or so, but it didn't seize in my soap. So I'm hoping it actually might be the perfect fragrance for doing the sculpted layers. If it moves too quickly, it may mean that I have to, just do something else here and then start again and use a different fragrance. But I'm hoping this one's going to be okay. Now, because we're going to be using an accelerating fragrance, I'm going to be very careful about my blending. We don't want to get our soap too thick, and we certainly want to just hand stir the fragrance in before pouring it in the mould. Typically you'll find a fragrance that accelerates. You can do several things. You can add more water to your recipe, you can make sure that you soap nice and cool, and you can also make sure you hand stir your fragrance in before it's poured into the mould. The other thing to do is just don't stop stirring it. Quite often you might see people who've maybe done a video and they're surprised by a fragrance that's accelerated, and what will have happened if they'll have put it into several jugs and then by the time they go back to a jug it's seized up or got really solid. If you can keep stirring it, you've got more chance of keeping it more fluid. If you stop and go away and stir another one, it's much more likely it's going to seize up a bit. Okay, so let's get that emulsified. Okay, so here's my mould all ready to go. I'm getting everything ready to go before I add my fragrance in. Now the other thing you might find is obviously when I tested this, I just tend to test fragrances just in my plain soap batter. Colorants, especially things like titanium dioxide, can actually increase the acceleration. The oils can react more to them. Right, so let's get my amount in here. So let's get this in. Now this is a good fragrance from the point of view if it doesn't rice or do anything horrible like that. That would be more problematic. If you had a fragrance that moved quickly but it also riced, you'd have no option really rather than to blend it in. Do make sure, even if you're in a hurry, that you still blend it in really thoroughly. And typically all the time you're stirring, you should be, unless you're going to have one that's going to seize on you, okay. It's normally when you stop that things start to set up. Right, okay, so I'm happy with that. I'm just going to get that in. Now, I haven't done enough of this to completely fill where I want to scrape to, because I'm just going to smooth it up the sides. Okay, this is a cone shape that I'm scraping out, so I don't want to waste soap by scraping out all around the cone. Just going to move this soap around if I can. Okay, good, so that is thickening up, but I think it's going to be good. So I'm just going to start getting this soap where I want it. God, I think that's working really well. Certainly a fragrance, I think, that for any sort of sculpted layer might actually be a really perfect fragrance to use. I don't think if I mentioned it does discolour slightly though, so that's one of the things you need to watch out for. Not dark, it goes to sort of like a very light brown sort of tan colour. Okay. I'm now just going to get my scraper, and this is just literally going right to the bottom of my mould, and I'm going to start getting this scraped to the right shape. Now if I just filled that bit up, it would be much easier to scrape, but then you're going to be wasting more soap. So I am going to have to muck around with mine and drop mine back sort of into where I want it. And then scrape again. So I'm really happy with that fragrance oil. Not only did it thicken nicely and quickly, which is something we don't normally like to say, is I was able to play around with it and push everything where I wanted it to without it getting too solid. So certainly big thumbs up for doing something like a sculpted layers. Even if you weren't using scrapers, if you were just using a spatula, that would be a great one to do. Let's get on with that next layer. So the next layer is going to be the actual ice cream cone. So for that I'm going to use Golden Shimmer from Mica Mama. Now to be honest, the discoloration would probably be quite a nice colour for this, but I am going to just add some mica in it as well. And then because I don't want it really goldy, I am going to add just a tiniest bit of chestnut brown in as well. And my chestnut brown is from Pure Rock Colours. Okay, so really just a tiny bit. Imagine 0.3 of a gram. Okay, my lye and my sodium lactate. And the other good thing about this fragrance is that it's really strong. So I'm actually only using it at 2.5% in my soap, which then, although the fragrances from stock fragrance can actually be more expensive than you would pay from other places, but normally they stick so well in the soap and they're so strong, you often only have to use sort of half of the amount of them. Whoops. Okay, so let's get this in. Okay, so can you see it's staying fluid enough to get it in the mould with no problems. So it's not badly accelerating fragrance by any means, but I wouldn't try and do some sort of intricate swirl with it, like I think even if you did something like a drop swirl with it, I think you'd have to move fairly quickly. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that. At the moment, it's getting close, but it's not completely ready to scrape. So I'm just going to leave that. I'll probably just clean out my jug and prepare it for the next layer, and then I'll come back and scrape that layer out. Let's get the top of our cone scraped out, so it's going to be the bottom of the ice cream layer. So I've just got a double-sided scraper, and this is going to be the bit for the ice cream. Okay, so that was nice and easy to do. Can you see how that was? Because that was such a nice flat layer. Okay, so I'm just going to tidy up the end here. And then I'm going to leave that and we'll prepare the next layer, which is going to be our ice cream. So once again, let's let that sit up. I'll start preparing the oils for my next layer, and then we'll come back and scrape this. Right, time to get this pink layer scraped out. So there's our pink scraped out nicely. I am just going to tidy up those edges a bit, and then bake up my yellow ice cream. Okay, so there's my yellow layer done. So again, I'm just going to be leaving that to set. It's not going to take very long at all. Actually, I could just pretty well, I think, scrape that straight away, couldn't I? Okay, I've got quite a bit of soap here, so that's okay. This is the first time I've made this soap, so certainly next time I made it I would put a little bit of less yellow in that yellow layer. Won't be a problem for me because I'm going to make some nice little sample bars out of this fragrance as well. This may be one of my favourite fragrances for doing sculpted layers. It's perfect. Right, I'm going to clean up those edges again, and then we just need to do the top bit, which is going to be sort of like a chocolate sauce layer. Now I want to get this down the middle. I don't want to put it down the sides. So I'm just going to be a little bit careful with the pour. If I get a bit down the sides, it's not the end of the world. I can always clean it off. Gosh, can you see how that's thickening up? It's actually being helpful because it's enabling me to dome this as I want it. Just doing this by the spatula because obviously where it's got quite thick, it's not flowed into all these grooves, so I'm just pushing it into those grooves there. Normally if you had a more fluid fragrance, you could just pour it and it would naturally fill those grooves. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Now I'm just hurrying along a bit before tidying off those sides. And what I've done is I previously just got some little bits of soap dough, just some red this is terracotta red soap dough, rolled it into little balls, and I'm going to make these into cherries. So to make them into a cherry, I've just got this like, little dibby stick. I have no clue what this dibby stick is called. Probably not a dibby stick, is it? And all I'm going to do is just poke a little hole into the top of each of those cherries. And I'm just trying to be quite quick because obviously that soap is pretty thick in there. Okay, so those are all my little cherries. And I'm just going to attach those, I'm just going to put them in the top. Gosh, I can hardly see where they need to go, but I'm sure we'll be fine. I was going to do some piping to make it look like cream, but I decided not to in the end. I thought we had enough on this soap as it was. So as you can see, I'm having to be quite quick because of how thick this soap batter's getting. Okay, so there we are. So I'm just going to spend just a little bit of time tidying up this end bit now that I've got those cherries in. I want to make sure they're well seated in there. I don't mind the fact that it sort of splodged some of the chocolate out because kind of that's what would happen, wouldn't it, with chocolate sauce? So that is that done. And we are just going to put that away and then we'll give that a cut tomorrow. Here we are with our cute ice cream soap the next day. So let's get this cut. Now, one thing I'm going to say just before I get it cut is I know that there'll be some of you, maybe you're in the UK or in Europe, who may be querying things like our food regulations here, our cosmetic regulations where we're not allowed to do cosmetics that imitate food. I'm not going to go into all of that in the video here, but I will actually put something in the description below. So if you want to have a look at that, then by all means please do have a look at that, and it'll probably link you to a document or something that I've done on the food regulations or the food imitations that we have here in the UK. Cool, that's really hard. Right, so let's have a look at our little ice cream and see what we've got. Oh, yay! And it's come out really cute. That'll look nice when it's all smartened up at the side. I like my little chocolate swirl thing on the bottom. Oh, sorry, bottom, top, and my little cherry. And the scrapers for this soap that I made are in the shop, so if you did want to go and get yourself some scrapers, then you could do that and you could end up with your own soap. You could obviously do as many layers of ice cream as you like. You could just do the one, or you could do even more than that, I guess, depending on how tall your mould is. But yeah, I think they're really fun. They're really cute, and they were quite nice and straightforward to do. And that fragrance oil, as I said, that coconut passion, I think it's now called Tropidelic, was really excellent for doing a scraped soap. And here's a final photo of the soaps. I really thought this was a fun soap to make, and it was really relatively straightforward. If you're a soap maker and want to make some great ice cream soaps, the scrapers are available in the iDreaming soap shop, so you can buy yourself a set right now. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video and you like the soap. If you do, it'd be great if you gave me a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see what I'm making in the future, why not subscribe to my channel? Thanks for watching, everyone. Happy soaping!